Okay, hi. My name is Shannon Hodge, and I'm a criminal justice major, and I'm in Humanities 1201, Section 6, and this is my co-part.
Alexia Jenkins. I'm an education major. I want to go on to becoming a teacher. And in both criminal justice and education, critical thinking is very important.
Yes, so basically with criminal justice, it's very key for critical thinking to work because one, you have to make split decisions at the drop of a dime. Like for example, police officers, when they're out on duty, they can't refer to like the workbook that they use during basic training. What they have to do is go off a mindset of good judgment and then make decisions whether that could be arresting somebody or reprimanding a situation by pulling your gun out for protection.
Another example is when I was working at a daycare last semester, and I had a child with epilepsy in my class, and it was a split decision of how to take care of that child and the rest of the class. And thank God, a previous situation occurred where I had already had her parents' number saved in my phone. So all I had to do was ask the director was it okay because she failed to make me an emergency contact list. So being that I already had the number, it was easier for me to just go ahead and call and take care of the situation without having to leave the room, which is against policy.
And also in this video, you will probably see me use my phone a lot because that's where majority of my information is because I write it out. I'm trying to be green and healthy, so that's why you see me using most of the information from there. Basically, we're going to get into the two questions that we have to review. Basically, what is critical thinking? What is a critical thinker, basically, and also where do you use critical thinking? Now, based off of what I am receiving right now from my email about this information, a critical thinker basically analyzes, investigates, dissects information, also respects one another's opinions, but also like checks up on it thoroughly instead of just taking information for what it is and what's being said. So one of my sources came from online through Savannah State Bookstore, and I found an ebook which is basically titled "Critical Thinking: An Appeal to Reason" by Peg Titley in New York, Routledge, 2011, and I accessed it today, of course. But the book was published in 2011. So now we'll go and start to read about critical thinking in a few minutes. Please forgive all the noise in the background. We had to do it in this specific area. So the first thing we learned was thinking critically about arguments and messages we see every day. In other words, means to keep in mind of pictures, like if you pick up a newspaper, you read about a story of something happening overseas, you get that little bit of information, but if it's interesting enough, you're probably going to look into it and dissect and find more information about it and then make a proper statement and stay in your position on it, basically. And also in Critical Thinking and Appeal to Reason, which is the book by Peg Tiley, it empowers students with a solid grounding in the lifelong skills of considering analysis and arguments, skills that should underpin every student's education. Basically, what he's saying is like critical thinking is the building blocks of everybody's lives because all day, every day, we're taking in information from smartphones, from computers, from what you're seeing right now, newspapers, books, magazines. This is the digital age area. So of course, we're all consuming information, whether it be for entertainment purposes or informational purposes. And based off of that, you get information, you analyze, and that's what critical thinking is mainly about. So now I'll direct a little bit to my partner so she can talk about some things.
Last week, when I gave my 1 minute presentation on what I thought of critical thinking was prior to me reading the book. So I got my information from the USC Aiken website, which is their QED way to think critically, and it's deep. They want you to think deep as a student, and it stands for Discover, Experiment, Evaluate, and Perform. So in the paper that we wrote, I decided to talk about something that happened 3 years ago where I discovered that my school was no longer having birth breast cancer assemblies. And as a critical thinker, I thought, what can I do to change that? It was something that people needed to be aware of. And once they started stop bringing awareness, the new freshmen, the new sophomores, the new juniors, the new teachers were not seeing how us as a whole from Epsom High School were bringing awareness to something that's worldwide and could affect your loved one any day.
And we both worked on this as far as like with the essay, and this is kind of where we touch bases for William Harris, which is specifically in our group, but not here, as you can see, because he's at work. Basically, we touched on the nursery part because we know that he has to deal with the medical field, and being in the medical field, you have to use critical thinking all the time to develop conclusions about what the patient's dealing with, what he has, what he doesn't have. And sometimes that also comes into play with nursery homes as well. Sometimes you get elderly people that tell you up front what type of issues they have, so the assistant people at the desk kind of attend to them and assist them where they really need the help. But some people sometimes don't really know what's going on with their body, so you need nurses to take tests and psychological tests to assess those issues appropriately, so then the patient is healthy and everything works out fine.
Also, with critical thinking, we believe that you have to have good judgment in order to make good decisions. And as far as nursing, I've seen on a TV episode where a patient once gave her prehistory to a nurse and told her that she was allergic to penicillin. And that nurse chose to ignore her because she was trying to rush to another patient. So I think,
and that's where sometimes people can fall, not to shut you off, that's where sometimes people can fail in critical thinking because they don't use their insight and their judgment to make the right decisions to help everybody and themselves in that situation. So obviously she was fired, but she should have did the right thing.
yeah, in that situation, it's very important to have good time management so you're not rushing and you can critically think of how you can get it done. Even if you know you have 5 minutes, you can say, hey, I have 5 minutes. Critically thinking, how can I get this done effectively? Because effectively is the most important thing to get it done.
And now I'm going to conclude on to my second source that I found dealing with issues with critical thinking. And this source is basically by Daniel Feldman. It's an ebook that I found today, and the book is called Critical Thinking, Making Strategic Decisions with Confidence. And it was published in Rochester, New York, basically, and the book was published in 2009. But of course, today I accessed it at 3:45 maybe. So now I will go into detail about the definition of a critical thinker. What I've just viewed is a critical thinker is a judicious reasoning about what to believe and before what to do, therefore. Now, basically what the book is saying from what I got from the copy is judicious is reasoning and deliberate is to be thorough, and being deliberate implies a consideration of or responsible attitude towards ideals, values, and so the depth of the issue in questioning or of the complexities of the issue. So it's a long definition, but you kind of get an understanding of what it is, since you do have 3 degrees in critical thinking, which we all understand. And also, critical thinking is a skill, which I'm going to refer to a lot in the paper that we both co-wrote today, as well as this interview, this thing. So it's not something you can just memorize. It's something that you have to have, just like common sense. Sometimes I lack off with common sense. I don't like to talk to many people about it, but when it comes to making decisions, I try and think about it logically, but as far as common sense, I lack in that area. But street smarts, I got you. In the streets, I can make valid points and everything else. So here are some elements of critical thinking. There's cognitive strategies, and that's basically comparing and contrasting ideas with actual practice. A second part is thinking precisely about thinking, using critical vocabulary, which is like big words that I like to throw around just to impress people sometimes. And then there is noting significant similarities and differences. Fourthly, examining or evaluating assumptions, distinguishing relevant and irrelevant facts. And this will be a key point for me to go into a little small story. I won't bore you too much, but mainly with my family, we're all sarcastic, so we all have debates about different discussions and issues and subjects, various things all the time. So normally what I notice through taking this class and actually taking time to read the book, when I would have discussions with my older brother, sometimes we would go back and forth, and we both state evidence, like if he was arguing about a specific type of sneaker, because sometimes he's sneakerhead. So if he tells me this sneaker is the best, I ask him why, such and such. So he gives me the follow-up, the reasons why, the color, the brand, how many people wear it, how many celebrities vouch for the sneaker, if it's durable, if it stays up, it doesn't tear or anything like that. Now, sometimes what I noticed, like if I would get him at a really good point where he would fall off and he didn't know really what to say next, I noticed, and this also says in the book, he did an emotion, like where he did emotional manipulation, which is a part of critical thinking too. It's a strategy kind of to knock you off in an argument. And what I noticed was what he would do was he would get upset, he would raise his voice, he would yell, probably say some stuff that he shouldn't say to me. But what I'm realizing is it's just one of his reactions to move around from the subject and just basically hyping the situation bigger than what it is, because he doesn't have the exact answer to what I'm stating. So this is how criminal thinking comes into play in my life, as far as with my families and conversations and debates that we have all the time. So that's one type of connection that I made with my life, that how it happens all the time, as well as critical thinking happens all the time when you're making decisions, when we're always hit with information, like I said, stated earlier before, when we're hit with digital information all the time, because it's everywhere. It's in newspapers, magazines, books, so on computers, smartphones. If you do have a smartphone, some people don't, but that's what we're always constantly doing. So there's always this inner struggle whether we should do the right thing or the wrong thing, analyzing the outcome, the benefits of what will occur when you make such decisions. So now I'll pass it on to my partner.
Critical thinking has to do with everyday problems. I believe that everyone who is a driver have been faced with at least one critical thinking situation. Whether somebody runs out of gas in front of you, you have to determine, okay, there's a car
And
coming.
I have seen that.
That happened to me the other day, so this is a perfect example. Someone ran out of gas in front of me, so my decision was, do I go around? And when I tried to go around, there were cars speeding in the left lane. So what I had to do, instead of reversing like I planned, I had to sit there and wait for about a few minutes so I could get over in the left lane, or the car would push off to the side in front of me. So critical thinking is someone who can take a situation, a normal day, I'm going from point A to point B, but you're not calculating exact situations like someone running out of gas in front of you. So trying to get from point A to point B can not happen the way you planned, but still producing an alternate situation. And that's what brought me to the decision-making method on page 12. There were 5 steps that I kind
Of the book, our official book.
In the book, Becoming a Critical Thinker. And I got the 5 steps of decision-making to write about in my paper. In high school, we had a breast cancer center the first 2 years. By the time my junior year, I was excited, expecting to see people singing, rapping, dancing, expressing how they feel they can bring awareness to breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time my junior year rolled around, I thought to expect another one again. And by that time, there was no assembly. So by the time my senior year came around, I was still expecting to see another breast cancer assembly. And by the time September came, which was the second month in school, I'm asking around, hey, are we going to have another assembly? People are like, it's September, why are you asking? But as far as critical thinking, it's someone who can think ahead and plan accordingly ahead of time. So by the end of September, I had the conclusion that no one was planning a breast cancer assembly. So as a critical thinker, I got my thinking cap on and started to plan this assembly because it was something that I wanted to do to bring awareness to my peers, not just because I wanted to see a good show of singing and dancing, but because we can get affected even if it's in our personal bodies or a loved one or a neighbor or someone. Breast cancer was serious, and it was something that should have been displayed in my school. So by that time, I did step number 1, which was wait for it to be done or to make it happen. And I decided to make it happen as a critical thinker. Step 2, the long-term objective, which was to see more people become aware of breast cancer, the effects, and the mortality rate. Step 3, critical thinking. Critical thinkers using their skills to solve problems and advocate causes in which they believe. And like I said before, I believe that breast cancer is a serious thing, especially since my school decided to promote the assembly 2 years prior to. Number 4, the heart of the reason. The heart of the reason was
Of course, because a family member had touched her life. We talked about it like a little bit when we were writing the paper together. Basically, from what she had told me was that it didn't make sense. Like, based off the information she had, she just accepted it. So she wasn't critically thinking when everything was going on. It wasn't until a family member was affected by the situation that she went back and thought, okay, I need to read more into it. So then when I have conversations about this to other people, they will be able to understand it clearly. And on top of that, I'll be able to give them more insight and I'll feel more knowledgeable about the entire situation. Yep, so I'm gonna pass it back to my partner so she can finish up.
Okay. And another part of being a critical thinker is to examine real life situations that are going on and relating them back to more than just yourself, more than just your family. How to take the same message and relate it to different people. So I may have the message of breast cancer is important, but I'm telling her, she's asking me why. And a critical thinker has to learn how to display, okay, I'm not just doing this because such and such is affected. I'm doing this because it's important to you, but this is why it could affect you as well. It may not happen now, but it's important to go ahead and be aware.
And I can attest to this, that critical thinking is a definite part of my life because it definitely made sense with this whole year and even me coming to Savannah State. I had to weigh the options of which school I was going to go to at the time. I didn't really know where I was going to go. I didn't know if I was going to have financial aid. So what I did was I thought about whether I should let my mother take care of all of those things or should I be an adult and handle those situations myself. So what I ended up doing was I ended up making the decision to plan everything out. I registered for school in the fall of 2012 in August and also got myself set up for school. I made sure my books and everything else was taken care of and thus forth because I took out the time to think critically about the situation, the graduation rate, including the cost, which got me here because the cost is really low. That allowed me to make an accurate decision of which school I was going to go to. So this is how critical thinking played a role in me coming to Savannah State and how I became a criminal justice major right now currently.
I think also that criminal justice major. But with any major, you have to be able to adapt to the environment,
Yes.
and that's very important with critical thinking. I can attest to being at another school which was predominantly white, to feeling uncomfortable.
And I had to transfer schools my senior year. I went to one predominantly school that was full of all African Americans and some foreign people. And then I had to go to another school which was all Caucasian. And it was a big wake up because I felt out of place. The school criteria that I learned before was very easy, like 1, 2, 3, ABC. But going to another school, it taught me that I had to work harder. I had to be more independent. And when it comes to looking into matters about my business and my financial things, I have to look into it myself rather than leaving that responsibility on someone like a parent because eventually you can't mooch off your parents for forever. You have to do some things on your own. So that's why I'm making the plans now.
And going to another university, it showed me how the importance of critical thinking as far as making a pre-established relationship with your professors. So by the time you are sick or something comes up where you can't complete an assignment on time, they can work with you and they already know who you are. You're not just another face in the class. And at the other university I attended, many efforts were made to try to connect with the professors and try to establish a relationship. So if something did happen, I could relate to them and they can relate to me. But in the end, it didn't play out that way. And I ended up at Savannah State University. And upon getting to this university, I really saw that professors do care and they work with you.
And
the more you establish relationships with them, even when you're outside of their class, they'll call you back and say, hey, come sit in my class and come help the students. And I was able to critically think about maybe I had a hard time in another class, but I took really good notes, and that's what helped me hang on, and I could pass them to somebody else, and they could keep afloat in that class as well.
And as I said before, we do live in a digital area, so I went ahead and found a third source, which I will announce to you. And it is basically by Melinda Jones and Lee Ann Vassar Marks and Marcia H. Riox. And basically it's titled Critical Perspectives on Human Rights and Disability Law. main reason why I wanted to tie in critical thinking with other things because I am a criminal justice major, so I'm supposed to be aware of legal affairs as well. And I felt like this would be the perfect avenue for me to advocate for critical thinking. So this is just a little excerpt from what I learned from this third source, which is Perspectives on Human Rights and Disabilities Critical Thinking. We live and work in a world of everlasting and accelerating change, which I stated, where information multiplies exceptionally and job requirements constantly shift, which means one day McDonald's could have wanted just a high school diploma. Now they want college degrees. That's why there's so many people that are up in age 20 to 30 still working, when people like us that are quite younger need those jobs as well. I'm just pointing that out. More than ever, we are able to reasonably challenge standard operating procedure or workflow issues. Faced with frequent choices about strategy and direction, employees today need the skill of critical thinking to choose the most effective path. And this is where what she was talking about before, it kind of comes into play at the work, decision-making method. At work, we make decisions based on information available to us. For example, imagine Bob approaches you and says in a very serious tone, if you put that conclusion in the report, you'll be searching for a new job by Monday. The boss never likes new ideas, so look what happened to Chris. He's out on the street now. How should you respond to such statement? How much weight should you give into what he is deciding and what is put into the report? You should be able to accept Bob's comments at face value. However, change what you had wrote and you should ignore it. What should you believe? In order to decide on what to do accurately, what I would have done, I would have took into heed what he was saying, but I also would have evaluated what actually happened to Chris, the one that magically disappeared that was working at the office. So then at that point, I would have some type of security system to know whether I would be getting fired in the same situation if I put new ideas into the newspaper that weren't really like asked for. So this is what the book says that basically people should do. We should generate a host of ideas in statements within our own minds. For example, we should form an action team of initiative and then think it through to the best focus of the needs of the assessment rather than just financial report. I think the financial department, this is what the person would have said in this situation to Bob. I think the financial department is unappreciated because no one sees their work. So if you can't generate new ideas, how will you get more people to put money into the department to allow the business to grow? Because they do want loyal employees there, and they want employees that are going to think smart, how the business is going to grow and boom more. So this is just one example of how critical thinking comes into play at a work environment. And on top of that, this is the financial market. So this could work for marketing directors. This could work for advertisement, accounting people, politicians, because I know they use this all the time. This is just some ways that critical thinking comes into play for different aspects of different people's lives and different types of people as well.
In addition to what you were saying about critical thinking in the workplace, I believe that professors are critical thinkers because they're able to think ahead and outline the whole semester before it happens. And as far as employers too, they're able to tell you, hey, you're working working with children, you need to be CPR certified. So before a situation comes up, you already know how to take care of that child or how to take care of your coworker who needs emergency assistance. So having certain jobs and certifications is critical thinking because one, maybe your employer may tell you, hey, you need 20 hours of training, but when you go and you see, hey, there's another class that I need, and you take it, that's being a critical thinker, thinking ahead of and making yourself more knowledgeable in a certain field and even outside of your field so you can bring it all together and display the knowledge in your work.
So now I'll read a second excerpt from my third and final source, which is Critical Thinking Perspectives on Human Rights and Disability by Melinda Jones, Leanne Vassar Marks, and Marcia H. Ross. Okay, I'm zooming in. So basically the introductory part of this book starts off with critically thinking and approaching human rights. So it starts off saying the relationship between law and the disability has evolved over the last 30 years. The introduction of human rights laws and disability, as well as discrimination legislation, has changed, and the landscape for people has changed with disabilities. The development of critical legal scholarship and critical disability studies have provided an impetus, basically, to the development. I apologize. To the development of human rights law and domestic law as well. And to understand the complexity of the role of disability rights, it is imperative to be knowledgeable about the situation. And it also says to have an opinion. Just like how you said in class, sometimes there's like no real right answer, no real false answer. So I'm always taught this in criminal justice. It's best to have opinion, but also have facts to back it up. Because if you don't have facts to back it up, your credibility is nothing. It's shot. It's just like when people are in the police field, there's countless cases where police officers get caught in situations where they end up taking a bribe from rather a gang member on the street, or it could be a lower level officer who's trying to get by and just get off on the system. What it comes down to is if you're willing to take a small bribe, then obviously the people that are head over the system that actually pay your money are going to think critically, how long will they last with our company? Will they be able to be loyal and to not do things that will compromise the representation of what's being brought forth by the shield of what we have, like especially with the police system. So if you're a deputy and you end up taking a $150,000 bribe from a gang member to pull your deputy from certain parts of the streets because big drug deals are going down, obviously you're going to do 10 years off the max. There's no consideration about it, and especially if they have evidence. So this is just one way criminal justice system thrives in critical thinking, and this is how we use critical thinking in the field all the time, especially when it comes to prosecuting individuals or just committing or creating a case and following through with a case and making an indictment.
Another part of this course is I believe that you as a professor are teaching us how to make good decisions, because with critical thinking there's morals and ethics is being right or wrong. So it's teaching us as far as time management. Is it right to come to class 40 minutes late? I just one minute. I apologize. We only have 3 more minutes and we're about to leave. Thank you. That was just a brief interruption. Just like with the librarian, we have to all follow rules and we have to think about the decisions. Obviously, it was right for her to tell us, okay, you guys can't kind of be in here because you're loud. You should be in a study room. But of course, because that would compromise the professionalism of her job, and it will also cause her to lose credibility. But of course, we only have 3 more minutes left, so we're just going to finish up the video, and that's why there was a brief pause, just letting you know. And also, she was just redefining the rules of the library and making sure that the ones that don't understand or may not know the rules are now aware. So the next time when we do our next video in a couple more days, we know where to go and how to do it and how to get it done to not be so loud. And based off of the information she gave us, just like when she had emotional attachment to the breast cancer week, based off of that experience that I just had, that's going to make me rethink the library rules and understand what's going on every time we come in here so I don't make the same mistake, basically. So this is how critical thinking applies within our lives and everything that's going on. So thank you for your time. Glad you listened, and you will see this probably on your website submitted. And yeah, that's our 3 sources. And I got my book, but I have to get a code so I can access my thinking lab. But until then, I do have the book.
Basically we have like 1 more minute, so I guess we'll ramble on about some more critical thinking stuff. Also, I use critical thinking when doing this assignment. Basically, when I looked at the syllabus and I read the roster of everything that was going on, I didn't realize the full extent of how long these papers are actually going to be and how much stuff goes into all this. I didn't recognize how difficult it would be, but I'm willing to do the work. I'm excited about the course because critical thinking is essential being a criminal justice major. But at the same time, I am still inquiring about like is this what you did last year with your other students? Is this how much work that you loaded onto them? Understand?
And how many passed the class?
Yeah, I am understanding that this is part of the real world. Of course, eventually at some time we're all going to have these heavy workloads and all this work to do while we're working our day jobs. But is this really like the 5-page papers every week? Is that really necessary for us to get this diploma? Like, I know I'm going for a bachelor's. I'm just wondering, is it really necessary for me to do that every week?
And 30-minute discussions too.
Now I can understand the discussions because I mean it allows
It's
us
more
to
than one
talk
person
about
can do
stuff,
it.
debate, we create arguments, we come to conclusions, we give out
We
evidence
would
to
love
their
to do one of these
conclusions.
every week.
Yes,
30
but
minutes,
the
an
5-page paper definitely I think should go. But thank you for your time and thank you for listening. And our 30 minutes is